History has its fair share of desperate battles and legendary commanders. But only one battle gave the world a famous phrase for stubborn courage. At the peak of a savage naval battle, with his ships taking a relentless beating, a vice admiral was signaled by his superior to retreat. In a moment that became pure legend, he held a telescope to his blind eye and supposedly declared, "I really do not see the signal." This is the story of that battle, the 1801 Battle of Copenhagen, a desperate gamble where Horatio Nelson's brilliant, risky tactics and the sheer ferocity of the fighting would cement his place in history and decide the fate of a coalition that dared to challenge the might of the British Empire. By 1801, Europe was neck-deep in the Napoleonic Wars. Britain, with its unmatched naval power, had a huge advantage over France. A key part of its strategy was the blockade, a naval ring of steel meant to strangle French trade and cripple its ability to wage war. But this policy had a catch. The Royal Navy insisted it had the right to search neutral ships on the high seas, grabbing any cargo they suspected was heading for France. This, as you can imagine, infuriated the neutral trading nations of the North, who saw it as a violation of their rights and a direct threat to their livelihood. That simmering resentment was about to boil over, thanks to the very volatile Tsar Paul I of Russia. Once a British ally, the Tsar had grown more and more hostile, especially after Britain captured Malta, an island he wanted for himself. So, in late 1800, he put together a powerful coalition, the Second League of Armed Neutrality. This alliance of Russia, Sweden, Denmark, and Prussia had one clear goal: to enforce the idea of free ships, free goods. Basically, they declared that neutral ships could trade with anyone they wanted, including France, without the Royal Navy interfering. For Britain, this was a five-alarm fire. The Baltic region was the Royal Navy's lifeline. It was where they got essential naval supplies, top-quality timber for their ships, hemp for ropes, and tar to keep them waterproof. The League threatened to sever this vital supply chain. On top of that, London feared the coalition was just a French puppet. If the fleets of Denmark, Sweden, and Russia ever joined forces, they could assemble a massive fleet of over 120 ships of the line, which could seriously challenge Britain's control of the seas. The British government knew it had to act, and fast. The plan was to strike before the spring thaw, when the Baltic ice would melt and free the Russian fleet from its bases at Revel and Kronstadt. A powerful fleet was gathered at Great Yarmouth, with a simple, brutal mission: break the League, either through amicable arrangement or by actual hostilities. Command of this expedition went to Admiral Sir Hyde Parker. He was a senior, experienced officer, but known for being cautious and playing by the rules. His second in command was a man cut from a completely different cloth, Vice Admiral Horatio Nelson. Impulsive, aggressive, and a true genius in a sea battle, Nelson was frustrated by Parker's slow and steady approach. While Parker mulled over a simple blockade, Nelson pushed for a fast, decisive blow against the heart of the alliance. Ultimately, Nelson's aggressive voice won out, at least partly. He convinced Parker to first attack the Danish fleet, which was dug in behind formidable defenses at its capital, Copenhagen. The stage was set for a showdown that would pit Britain's most celebrated naval hero against an entire nation defending its home. The British fleet reached the waters off Copenhagen in late March. Early April 1801, Nelson first sighted the city on the 30th. After days of pointless talks, it was clear the Danes weren't backing down. Copenhagen's defenses were a death trap. Their harbour was guarded by dangerous shoals, powerful currents, and a line of anchored warships and floating batteries, a terrifying, mile-and-a-half-long wall of over 600 guns. This anchored fleet was backed up by powerful forts on land, especially the Trekroner Fortress at the harbour entrance. To make things even harder for an attacker, the Danes had removed all the navigational buoys, turning the approach into a deadly maze of uncharted shallows. A head-on assault was suicide, but Nelson, after personally leading a daring daylight reconnaissance at close range, came up with a typically bold and unconventional plan. Instead of attacking the heavily armed northern end of the Danish line, he would take 12 of his shallowest ships, navigate a narrow, treacherous channel to the south, and hit the weaker southern flank. Once his ships had smashed the southern Danish vessels, they could move up the line. Meanwhile, bomb vessels placed behind his main force would be free to shell Copenhagen itself and force a surrender. It was a massive risk, demanding perfect sailing and nerves of steel. Admiral Parker, with the bigger ships, would stay to the north to handle the shore forts and watch out for any Swedish or Russian ships. On the morning of April 2, 1801, a good southerly wind kicked up, and Nelson gave the signal to go. And almost immediately, things went wrong. As the squadron tried to make the tricky turn into the channel, 3 ships, HMS Agamemnon, HMS Bellona, and HMS Russell, ran aground on a shoal. Just like that, Nelson's force was down from 12 ships to 9 before a single shot was fired. His battle line was weaker, and the whole plan was in danger. Around 10:30 a.m., the Danish guns opened up, and the battle began. The British ships anchored one by one, presenting their broadsides to the Danish line from just 200 yards away. What came next wasn't a battle of clever maneuvers, as Nelson himself put it, it was just downright fighting. For the next 3 hours, the two fleets slugged it out, point blank. The air turned into a thick, choking cloud of gunpowder smoke, pierced by the deafening roar of over 1,000 cannons. On both sides, ships were torn to shreds. Decks ran slick with blood, and the screams of the wounded were drowned out by the noise of war. The Danes fought with incredible courage, constantly sending fresh volunteers from the shore to replace the dead and wounded on their battered ships. 5 miles away, Admiral Parker watched the chaos unfold from his flagship. All he could see was smoke and the flash of cannons. With 3 of Nelson's ships out of action and the Danish resistance way stronger than expected, the cautious admiral decided the attack was failing and Nelson's losses were becoming unacceptable. Around 1:15 p.m., Parker made a fateful decision. He hoisted signal number 39, the order to disengage. On the deck of HMS Elephant, Nelson was told about the signal. This was the moment that would go down in naval legend. Annoyed that his commander couldn't see that victory was close, Nelson turned to his flag captain. "You know, Foley," he said, "I have only one eye, I have a right to be blind sometimes." Then, holding a telescope to his blind eye, he famously declared, "I really do not see the signal." Nelson ordered his own signal for close action to stay flying, directly ignoring his superior. Not every captain could see Nelson's flagship through the smoke, however. Captain Riou, commanding a small squadron of frigates attacking the Trekroner Fort, saw only Parker's signal. He dutifully ordered his ships to pull back. As they turned, they were hit by a devastating volley from the fortress, and a cannonball cut Riou in two. But Nelson's audacious defiance paid off. His faith in the superior training and gunnery of the Royal Navy was vindicated. By 2 p.m., the relentless British broadsides began to overwhelm the Danish line. One by one, the Danish guns fell silent. Ships surrendered, caught fire, or drifted away helplessly. The Danish commander, Olfert Fischer, had to move his flag from his burning flagship, the Dannebrog, to the Trekroner Fort. Around 4:30 p.m., the Dannebrog exploded, killing about 250 of her crew in a single, horrific blast. With the southern end of the Danish line shattered, the battle was effectively won. With the Danish defenses broken and Copenhagen vulnerable, Nelson switched from warrior to diplomat. To stop more bloodshed, he sent a message ashore under a flag of truce to Crown Prince Frederick. He wrote that he would be forced to burn the ships he had captured, without having the power of saving the brave Danes who have defended them. The threat was crystal clear: agree to a ceasefire, or the city would suffer. The Danes, seeing their situation was hopeless, agreed to talk. The next day, Good Friday, Nelson himself went ashore to meet with the Crown Prince and finalize the terms. It was during these tense negotiations that a bombshell piece of news arrived that changed everything. On March 23, just days before the battle, Tsar Paul I of Russia had been assassinated in St. Petersburg. His successor, Alexander I, was known to be much friendlier to the British. Suddenly, the entire battle seemed strategically unnecessary. The very foundation of the League of Armed Neutrality was its founder, Tsar Paul. With him gone, the coalition fell apart. The Danes, who now knew this but kept it from the British, had no reason to keep fighting and agreed to a 14-week armistice, effectively pulling out of the League. The cost of the battle had been staggering. The British suffered about 1,000 killed and wounded. Danish losses were far higher, with estimates of killed, wounded, and captured ranging from 1,600 to over 2,000 men. 12 of their ships had been captured or destroyed. It was one of the bloodiest fleet battles of the time. Even Nelson, a veteran of countless fights, wrote that evening, "I have been in 105 engagements, but that of today is the most terrible of them all." After the battle, the cautious Admiral Hyde Parker was recalled to London, his reputation damaged by his hesitation. Nelson, the man who defied orders to win, was made the new commander-in-chief of the Baltic fleet. His victory at Copenhagen, combined with his legendary act of insubordination, sealed his status as Britain's greatest naval hero. The battle ended the threat from the Northern powers, secured Britain's crucial naval supply lines, and let the Royal Navy turn its full attention back to its main enemy, Napoleonic France. The Battle of Copenhagen is a wild story of tactical genius, brutal combat, and the sheer unpredictability of war. It was a battle won by one man's audacious refusal to back down, and it gave us the phrase, "to turn a blind eye." It was a victory made tragically ironic by a distant assassination, but one that absolutely shaped the course of the Napoleonic Wars. If you enjoyed this trip back to the Age of Sail, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of high seas adventure. Drop a comment below and let us know which battle you think truly defined the Napoleonic Wars.